What a load of random crits are so fucking annoying. You little dirty tramp. I saw your house on a red light yesterday, you little dirty
After 6 months, we have finally made it to the last slot in Scout's arsenal. His melees. No, I'm not talking about that type of melee. Trust me, I'm not that much of a failure. No, I'm talking his bats. Now, Scout's primary selection is kind of shite, in my opinion, and Scout's secondaries are the complete opposite. Probably some of the best selection for any class. So where do Scout's melees fall on this scale? Let's see.
Wow, Sam, really starting the video off strong. Starting on one of the most boring, useless fucking weapons in the game.
Yeah. Okay, I know. You're partially right. Because I know I'm starting with a stock weapon. They're really bland, there's not much to talk about. But I'm bringing this up early to dispel a myth that is widespread across the entire community. If you've seen anybody talk about Scout's melees, you've most likely heard them say something along the lines of, Scout's melees are only good for utility, you shouldn't use them for actual combat. Bullshit. And to explain why, I'm going to have to do a bit of a deep dive into a scary place called the TF2 source code. There are two types of attacks in TF2, projectile attacks and hit scan attacks. Projectile attacks are your rockets, your pipes, stickies, anything pyro can reflect, anything you can easily see flying through the air. Hit scan is just bullet attacks. Your scatter guns, miniguns, sniper rifles, anything that instantly damages an enemy once you point and shoot. Now, to see whether a projectile has hit or not, the game uses something called a collision hull. A big box around the player that, when a projectile comes into contact with the hull, tells the game that the projectile has hit the player. Hit scan weapons use hitboxes. They're different to the collision hull because, although the hull is one large box, the hitboxes are several small boxes that kinda wrap around each appendage of the player. Now, melee attacks are weird. They're technically hit scan, which means they fire an invisible bullet that travels a short distance. But instead of using the hitboxes to see if the shot hit, they use the collision hull to see if the shot hit. Make sense? No? Okay, well, just watch this video by Shunick. It explains it a lot better with a lot nicer visuals than mine, and overall he just has a better knowledge of TF2's game engine. Now, the main argument towards Scout's melees being useless is that if you're up that close, why don't you just shoot them? And I don't agree with that at all. If you're in melee range of your opponent, your shots become a lot harder to hit on a moving target. It's the same reason why you should get as close as possible to heavies and demo men as Scout. The closer you are, the less time you stay on screen for them, making it much harder to shoot you. Now, if you recall correctly, melee attacks use the collision hull to see if your attack hit or not, which are a lot bigger than hitboxes. If your primary and secondary clips are empty, I don't see what's wrong in going in for a melee attack. And a lot of people will say they're super inconsistent, but I feel like if you have a consistent ping and you practice with melee weapons, you'll know when it'll hit and when it won't. Now look, I'm not saying you should be whipping out your melee every 2 seconds, sometimes you need to just put it back in your pants. Sometimes it is worth it to backpedal, reload and take the shot. But saying that Scout's melees are useless for damage dealing is just a lie. As for the actual bat itself that we were supposed to be talking about, it's definitely a stock weapon. A reliable backup damage dealer, but greatly overlooked because of this misconception. This weapon is my one true love. Which sucks because Valve completely fucking crippled it. In what world does using this weapon justify losing 15 health off of one of the most low health, mushy, glass cannon type classes? Look, I know I'm built different, okay? But there's only so much I can handle. Now, I know why this stat is in here. In the previous iteration of the weapon, getting hit with the ball would instantly stun enemies. Not just slow them, but completely stun. Pair this with the cleaver and you have a borderline broken combo that was unfun to play against and piss easy to use. This weapon went through years of changes trying to fix it, which left us with this version that we have now. The minus 15% is a leftover from when the Sandman used to fully stun people. So I need to ask, why the fuck did they keep the health reduction once they removed the stun mechanic? All other items that decrease max health balance it out by buffing speed and damage, or making it so that you can get overhealed more than you normally can. The Sandman, it lets you fling balls in people's faces. It's really annoying because this weapon is so fun to use. The sounds it makes just activate something in my fucking monkey brain. I can't explain it. So how do we fix it? What we do is we get rid of the health penalty. It's not needed. Then we buff the ball's damage so that it does 35% point blank damage instead of 15. The slowing effect is kept, but there's a damage reduction on the actual bat itself. I don't really know how much though. This would make it so that it's actually usable, and it's also not just a reskin of the Rap Assassin. With the Rap Assassin it does 40 damage over 5 seconds plus 15 on hit. So you could either choose a slower damage rate but higher damage overall, or instant damage with a lower overall damage. It would make the bat less unique, but the thing is, I don't think there's a way to implement a stunning mechanic that would be fun to play against, other than the way we have now. But if you have any ideas, leave them in the comments. Another weapon that was completely overlooked, at least until recently. Due to the opinions of a few content creators, people had the idea in their head that this weapon sucks willy. Then, Fish on a Stick, the Chad himself, busts down the door and says, "Fuck you, here's a 13-minute video on why you're wrong." Honestly, when I learned people thought that this weapon was shit, I was baffled. In Highlander, it is the undebatable meta, and yeah, I know a lot of my viewers don't care about comp, but if it's balanced for comp, it's balanced for casual. Something that may have put people off this weapon is the damage for the actual melee attack. It does a base damage of 12. That's just slightly more than the average TF2 player's punch.
What the fuck? Is this gonna make fun of TF2 players? R/TF2! We need to go after this guy! Rerenders, assemble!
But the balls are what make up for the poor performance. Just like in real life. The bauble does a base damage of 15 as well as another 40 in bleed damage. This makes it a great fight instigator as well as a finisher tool. It also pairs really nice with the cleaver as they're both projectile based bleed weapons, which increases Scout's range. Oh, and on top of that, there's a hidden stat that's not listed on the weapon, that is, if the bauble is airborne for more than 1 second, it guarantees a crit, which brings the total damage up to 85. Depending on how you like to use your melee slot, this is probably one of the best options. The Atomizer is a melee weapon most often seen in casual servers. It's really only used for its utility compared to the other weapons we've talked about, which is fair. It's got a minus 15% damage reduction against players, but you're not using it for that. you're using it for the triple jump ability it gives you. Personally, I don't find triple jumps all that useful. A lot of the time you can reach the majority of places in the game with a double jump or a crouch jump, but there are certain spots this lets you get to, as well as helping new players learn flank routes easier. Again, I don't personally use it, but it's nowhere near a bad weapon at all. But wait, I forgot about one of the most important parts. When you hit an enemy while airborne, you get mini crits, which combined with the damage reduction, lets you do a whole 40 damage. A whole 5 extra damage. That's 5 whole health points more than the stock bat's normal base damage. I have no idea why they added that. It literally never comes into play unless you're like underwater, so I don't know. I don't know. This is one of the most divisive weapons on this list. On one hand, you have the Sixes player who really only uses this for building Uber. Then you have the casual player who sees that competitive players use it for building Uber, so it must be good. They equip it, and then they never use it again because nobody plays medic in pubs. So the main reason people say that this weapon is bad is because 1, people aren't using Scout's melee for actual damage, and 2, the utility that it offers isn't used in pubs. Which both are fucking stupid. I've already said why. Sometimes it is good to use your melee. But what puts people off using this one is that if you miss, you hit yourself, doing 75 damage to yourself over a period of 5 seconds. I personally have never really found this to be a problem. If you teach yourself how to use your melee, know when a swing will hit and when it won't, this will literally be a direct upgrade to stock. Like, 1 hit does 75 damage. Even if you do manage to hit yourself, you have the speed to get yourself a health pack before that 5 seconds runs out. So if you know the map layout, you won't be dying nearly as much as you used to. Okay, but fine, some people have shit internet. Their ping isn't reliable, which means melee attacks aren't either. So melee attacks are off the table. You still have the Uber building utility of it. And if you say, oh, nobody communicates in pubs anyway, there's a hidden solution to that. If you go into your settings and you bind voice chat to a certain key, pressing that key during gameplay will allow you to communicate with your teammates.
Hey guys, just letting you know, I have chronic IBS, so if I leave this game for a shit, don't be alarmed.
You by chance have bottom?
I know, it's revolutionary, right? Honestly, 99% of the time, if you want to start communicating with your team, all it takes is just one person asking for help in the VC to get the ball rolling. But some people are shy, or they're lone wolves who play with themselves. But they're lone wolves who play on their own. Okay, fine, I get that, but let me show you one more thing.
Play ball!
Boston Basher jumps. If you swing your bat just before a jump, the self-damage done to you will nearly double your jump height. This tactic isn't talked about as much, but it can come in really useful in certain situations, like if you fucked up a jump, if you need more vertical or horizontal distance. But odds are, if the only reason you're using this weapon is for that jump, you're probably just better off using the Atomizer. But overall, it's super overlooked in casual, and it's probably the melee weapon I use most. The definition of underrated. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. This time it's a bit more reasonable why people don't use this weapon. That 25% damage taken from explosives, considering Scout is already really vulnerable to explosives, it stings. But I still think that the upside is an even balance against it. When you get a kill with any weapon, the enemy drops a small health pack. This can be literally a godsend. A lot of people use it for fighting pyros as an extinguishing tool, which, yeah, it works super well, but it's also nice to have health back after any fight, and without giving up your secondary slot. As for the explosion downside, I don't know, it's never really affected me, except maybe in like tight corridors. I guess it's more of a learning curve with this weapon. The worse your movement is, the harder you're going to find it to use this weapon. Its usefulness increases with your dodging skills. The sun on a stick is bad. Look, I'm a hipster, but I'm not that much of a hipster. Everyone's said it before and I'll say it again. It's bad and you cannot deny it. The crits against burning players is really situational, as 1, if the player is burning, odds are whoever set them on fire is going to finish them off. 2, if you're melee fighting someone, odds are they won't be on fire. And 3, if you see someone on fire and the person who set them alight is dead, just fucking shoot them. Now, it's not 100% useless, just like 99% useless. There's a 25% afterburn immunity, which is nice actually, and you can technically still use this as a melee, though odds are it will not kill nearly as much as the stock bat, but it really doesn't make a difference. This is not Scout's worst melee. Everybody needs to apologise to the sun on a stick right fucking now. For years people have called it Scout's worst melee when this fucker slid under the radar. The sun may be extremely situational, offer very little utility and is overall just kinda shit. It doesn't actively hinder you to use it, unlike the Fan of War. Firstly, using it as a last resort, out of the question, because your first hit does 9 damage, and every hit after that does 26, the same as the sun on the stick. Okay, fine, but Scout's melees don't always need to be used for attacking. The marking for death is where it's at on this weapon. Well, actually no, it's not, because it's a stupid fucking way of marking people for death. Because, let's put it this way, the way they intend you to use this weapon is mark an enemy, back up, and then shoot them. If you're in a position to do that, why not just fucking shoot them the first time? It's not even like you can make a suicide play into a crowd of people and mark them all for death, because you can only mark one target at a time. There's not even a point using this against bigger enemies like heavies, because in the time it takes to get in there and mark them and get out, you probably could have just shot them twice. The only reason this weapon got off as lightly as it did is because of its use in MVM. I'm not talking about MVM, I'm talking about normal TF2. With the sun on a stick, it's got shit damage, but it has a very slightly useful utility with the afterburn resistance. The Fan of War has the same damage as the sun on a stick after 2 hits, and has a utility that you should never use. Fuck you, Fan of War, you've gotten off too easy too long. You are not only Scout's worst melee weapon, you are Scout's worst weapon, full stop. Well, it wouldn't be a Not Sam G video if I didn't insult half my viewers and then get pissed off over a menial thing. So, I think this is a successful end to the series. I don't normally do this, but if you liked the video, please subscribe because it does mean a lot. But those are Scout's weapons. The overrated, the amazing, and the overlooked.